Today on the Bone Barrel Podcast, we discuss the infamous dating game serial killer, Rodney Alcala. Then, we cross over into the Twilight Zone with our review of series classic, Living Doll. That's a signpost up ahead. Your next stop, the Bone Barrel Podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to another installment of the Bone Barrel Podcast.
Woohoo!
Where we discuss horror movies, true crime, and even some spooky TV shows. You got me, your host, Richard Jones, and my co-host,
Brian Almeida. On our last episode, we were talking about Black Christmas, and I'm sure you heard, I think you saw in the news that Olivia Hussey
she passed away.
Yeah, I was so bummed. Dude.
Yeah, I immediately seen it. I was like, oh, no.
Olivia Hussey starred as the titular character in the 1968 film adaptation of Romeo and Juliet. She starred in numerous film and television productions throughout her career, as well as a handful of genre efforts, which include the It miniseries, as well as her portrayal of Norman Bates' mother in Psycho 4.
Oh, wow.
Same year. Perhaps above all, she will be remembered and treasured as the very first final girl, Jess Bradford, in 1974's Black Christmas. On behalf of the Bone Barrel Podcast, our thoughts and prayers are with her friends and family. Miss Hussey, rest in peace. You will be missed.
And we'll do a moment of silence.
All right,
All
cool.
right.
Nice. One more thing, speaking of Black Christmas, I didn't get to talk about it on the last episode, but I failed to mention Carl Zitterer because we didn't talk about him. He's the composer for the movie. Super unorthodox methods, the way that he produced the music for this film. He tied all these kitchen utensils to a beat-up piano, and he just beat the shit out of this thing, apparently. The music is just so iconic and so scary, and it adds so much to the movie, and I just wanted to acknowledge Mr. Carl Zitterer.
And I will say this, Brian, I did check out. I didn't watch him. But I checked out the other Black Christmases.
Okay, wait. Okay. Which ones? Which one?
The latest one is terrible.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad you said that.
I'm like, okay, girl power, woohoo.
See?
But I'm like, this makes no sense. The newest one, it has nothing to do with...
Absolutely
It has to do with, like, the frat boys are a cult.
Mm-hmm. You could have named this anything else. How is this Black
This
Christmas?
is a Black Christmas.
Did you notice that Imogen Poots is in it?
Yes.
She's from Green Room and the remake of Fright Night. Yeah, she's
Yep.
in it. Yeah, so kind of cool. And girl power and feminism, and it's like, all right, cool. I can get behind that, certainly. But it's all in delivery, and there does come a point where you're like really shoving the audience's face in it, and it's lost its impact. It's all about if it feels forced on the audience or not. Like, you can deliver something like that genuine and get the hairs raised. Do you remember Marvel Avengers Infinity War and Endgame?
Yes.
Right, the last two movies.
Yeah.
So both of those movies have nice little feminist moments. And in Infinity...
Oh, yeah, in Endgame or whatever, where it has, like, all the female heroes are about to team up, and I was like, whoa! I'm like, yeah, that was...
See,
that was dope.
Okay, so you liked it. Okay.
I liked that part. I'm like,
and all the
portals,
women
all the
superheroes
you had
come
Ironheart,
swooping in.
which
Yes,
is Pepper Potts,
and it's this grand sweeping shot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so to me, that felt like Black Christmas 2018. I remember watching that in the theater and going like, ew, like it just felt too much. It felt so forced, and it's like, I already get that. I didn't need to fucking see it. But I remember there's a similar moment in Infinity War. It's at the end when that big war, I think, in Wakanda is happening. Oh yeah,
it's
right?
Nigeri or whatever her name is. The bald one.
Yes, I think so. I think it's her, and she's fighting that big badass alien bitch, the big blue one, and the blue one's getting ready to kill her or something. The blue one's like totally confident, and she goes, "You're gonna die alone," and you hear she's not alone, right? And the camera pans, and fucking Black Widow is there, and there's another female superhero there, but so now there's three chicks battling this one alien chick, right? That like, I'm a dude, right? And that part moved me. I was like, fuck yeah, like standing together, like hell yeah. It didn't feel forced. It was very organic. That's Black Christmas 74 to me. But to me, when I watched Endgame and it was like the camera swooping and all the chicks ever fucking landing perfectly and shit, that at that point I was going, okay. Man, we really went off on a side tangent here. Carl Zitterer, he's awesome. Yeah, we should probably just move on to the next.
Brian, okay, let's get to something real. How about that?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, welcome to Real Horrors.
Woo!
We're going to go over the dating game killer. But before I get into the dating game killer, I want to talk about the show, The Dating Game. It was a classic game show created by Chuck Barris, which, if you don't know that name, he also created a few other television shows, such as The Newlywed Game.
Oh, okay.
The Dating Game featured a single woman choosing one of 3 bachelors after asking a series of questions to go on a date that was usually paid for by the show itself. Last night, I watched Woman of the Hour on Netflix.
Okay, what's
It's the
that?
Anna Kendrick movie that's based off of this.
Oh, duh. Yeah, okay.
Okay. And I'm going to let you know, this movie was great. I loved it.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Dang it, she directed it.
If you go watch it, Brian, I'm going to let you know now, the names of the characters were actually changed for privacy.
Okay.
The main character, who is Anna Kendrick, her name is Cheryl Bradshaw.
So her name, everybody's name has been changed.
In real life, her name was spelled Cheylye, like that spelling. I might have misspelled that.
I think you did.
But, you know, the Cheryl, that would be spelled CH, right?
Okay.
Well, in the movie, she spells it with an SH.
Okay.
So they still changed her name, kind of.
But it's still...
It's still Cheryl Bradshaw.
Okay.
The plot of the movie, at the beginning, you'll see, like, one of Rodney Alcala.
Rodney Alcala.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's the dating game killer. You're going to see him commit one of his acts.
Okay.
And then it cuts to Anna Kendrick being interviewed for a acting position. She wants to become famous, you know. Everywhere she goes, she keeps getting denied. Her agent's trying to get her gigs, and she goes, finally, I got you a gig finally. Are you excited? And she goes, oh my God, yes. What is it, you know? And it cuts to her watching an episode of The Dating Game, and she's like, oh God. The girl on there's like, Bachelor number 1. If I was this, how would you eat it?
And she's going,
and she goes, oh God.
I can't fucking do this cheesy.
All right.
Have you seen the Dating Game segment with Rodney Alcala on YouTube?
No, but
Oh, you should
I'm
watch
gonna have
it.
to. I should have looked it up. I should have.
Yeah, I watched it. It was good.
Anyway,
it was
so
interesting.
Now to get to the story.
Yes, let's do it.
Rodney Alcala, also known as the dating game killer, was born in San Antonio, Texas. He was the third of 4 children born to a Mexican-American family. In 1951, Alcala's father had moved the entire family to Mexico, then abandoned them 3 years later.
Whoa. He moved his family from America to Mexico?
From San Antonio, Texas, to Mexico.
From America to Mexico.
And then 3 years later, abandoned them.
And then he said peace and left
after
them
3 years.
in Mexico.
He's like, I'm going to go get some milk.
What the? I'm going to go get some leche.
In 1954, when Rodney was 11 years old, his mother moved away with him and his 2 sisters to suburban Los Angeles. Now, Rodney was an academically gifted student who was reasonably popular amongst his peers and was well supported by his family. He attended various private schools during his youth before graduating from Cantwell's Sacred Heart of Mary High School. That's a name. He was in the yearbook planning committee and in the track and cross-country routines. Remember that.
He was in the yearbook planning committee?
So taking pictures. And he's very athletic.
And he can run.
In 1961, at the age of 17, so he's only 17 at this point, Alcala joined the United States Army to become a paratrooper and served as a clerk. During his service, he was actually noted by his commanding officer as being manipulative, vindictive, and insubordinate.
Say that one more time, because manipulative. Say that
Manipulative. Manipulative. I can't say it, Brian.
Manipulative?
Yeah. You know, Brian, when you say it.
Huh?
You say it, Brian.
Say what? Manipulative?
Yes.
Manipulative.
Because I can't say that word. Vindictive and insubordinate. Alcala was disciplined on several occasions. Leave that in. I kid you not.
Okay.
Because you need to say it. I can't do it. Alcala was disciplined on several occasions for assaulting young women. In 1964, after what was described as a nervous breakdown, during which he went AWOL and hitchhiked from Fort Bragg, you ready for this, Brian? North Carolina to his mother's house in California. So from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast.
He moved to with his mom.
He hitchhiked.
How old is he at this time?
He was 20. Alcala was actually diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. Do you know what that is, Brian?
Where you don't want to be around people?
It's a disorder defined by a chronic pattern of behavior that disregards the rights and well-being of others. So basically, he doesn't care how you feel or how you're going to react to it.
Isn't he a sociopath at that point?
Basically. People with this disorder often exhibit behavior that conflicts with the social norms, leading to issues with interpersonal relationships, employment, and legal matters. The condition generally manifests in childhood or early adolescence with a high rate of associated conduct problems and a tendency for symptoms to peak in late adolescence and early adulthood.
Okay.
Substance use, mood disorder, or even other personality disorders can affect it. It can be treated with meds like antipsychotics, antidepressants, and mood stabilizers. Alcala was also estimated by military psychiatrists to have an IQ of 135.
Is that good?
Normal IQ is, like a normal high is 101.
Okay. Yeah, I gotta be honest. I don't know anything about
So
IQ.
it's like a range from 78 to 101 is normal. He had 135.
Is it possible to score lower than 78?
Yes, you're special.
Oh, damn. I don't know if I want to take one now.
So because of disorder, he was discharged on medical grounds. After being discharged from the Army, he graduated from UCLA School of the Arts and Architecture and later studied film under Roman Polanski at New York University.
Oh my gosh, no.
Oh,
he
you know
didn't.
Oh, you know him.
No, he didn't.
You know Roman Polanski?
Dude, do you know Roman Polanski?
Yes, I do.
Crazy. Wait,
So, Brian,
I want to clarify because this is insane. Rodney Alcala, this serial killer, studied film under Roman Polanski. Okay, at a university
In New York.
and Polanski was teaching there.
Mm-hmm.
And what year was this?
NYU. Late 1960s.
So was Rosemary's Baby made at that time yet?
Hold on.
Okay.
So, Roman Polanski. So, he's a French-Polish film director. I didn't know if you know this, Brian, but you know film. So, he is the recipient of numerous accolades, including an Academy Award, 2 British Academy Awards, 10 Caesar Awards, 2 Golden Globes, and as well as the Golden Bear and Palme d'Or.
Whoa.
However, in 1977, he was arrested for drugging and raping a 13-year-old girl. He pled guilty to receive a lesser charge of unlawful sex with a minor in exchange for a probation-only sentence. However, the night before the sentence hearing, he learned the judge would reject the plea bargain, so he fled the U.S. to Europe, where he continued his career. To this day, he remains a fugitive to the United States justice system, and he is still alive at 77.
He's still alive, and he's still out there. People still watch his movies. Freaking crazy. It just all feels so connected. So, you know, obviously, that Roman Polanski was married to that actress Sharon Tate back in the day, and she was pregnant with his child. And she and some of her friends were murdered by the Manson cult.
Oh, my God.
Did you know that?
No.
Yeah, dude. 150 billion%. Roman Polanski's wife, she was pregnant with his child. He was gone at the time. Charles Manson's cult, like out living in the desert, came out into the Hollywood Hills and fucking murdered Sharon Tate. She was pregnant, and her friends. It's fucked up. Have you ever seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? It's Quentin Tarantino, and they kind of like Inglourious Bastards it in a way because they like alter history a little bit. Spoilers if you haven't seen Inglourious Bastards, but in Inglourious Bastards, like they murder the fuck out of Hitler, like they machine gun him. It's awesome.
I haven't seen it in a while. All I remember is like I want my 100 Nazi scalps. Anyway.
Yes. So they kill Hitler at the end, but Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is the same way as that. These Manson cultists come out of the desert and they end up at the wrong house and they get fucked up. It's awesome. Anyway.
Okay, now Rodney having Roman Polanski as a mentor doesn't sound like the best thing for him, right?
No.
Well, I don't think it was either, because we're about to get to his crimes.
Plus, he made Rosemary's Baby. Sorry if you like Rosemary's Baby, but...
So, September 25th, 1968. At this point, he is 23, 24. A passing motorist named Donald Haynes called police after witnessing Alcala lure Tali Shapiro, who was only 8 years old.
Oh my gosh, jeez.
Into his apartment.
His apartment.
Yep.
Okay.
She was approached by Alcala on the way to school when he pulled up beside her in his car and asked if she needed a ride. So she initially refused until he said, "Oh, but I know your dad." And back in the 60s, it's a little different.
Yeah, but that's why you tell your kids,
nowadays,
I will never send somebody you don't know to come get you.
Or what's the password?
That's a good one.
He then took her to his apartment where he told her he wanted to show her a picture. Who does that sound like?
What? What are you saying? Say one more time.
What other serial killer does that sound like to you? You should know this one. It's another famous one.
Let me take your picture?
Or let me show you a picture.
Let me show you a...
Let me take your picture is probably closer.
Let me take your pictures, immediately reminding me of Stray Dogs, that graphic novel.
Dahmer.
Oh, I don't know that.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll cover Dahmer soon, don't worry.
Okay.
He said, let me show her a picture. Well, when police arrived, she was found alive in her own pool of blood, but she had been raped and beaten with a steel bar.
This is the 8-year-old girl?
Yes.
Holy
And she was found
moly.
alive in a pool of her own blood. Alcala had fled, and Talia was in a coma for 32 days.
He's 24 and he rapes this 8-year-old girl.
Mhm.
He beats her with a bar.
And she was in a coma for 32 days
Mhm.
and spent months in recovery, but she did survive. To avoid arrest, he left California and enrolled at NYU using the name John Berger.
Mhm.
Cornelia Criley, a 23-year-old flight attendant, was found raped and murdered in her Manhattan apartment on June 12th, 1971. So at this point, he was 28, I believe. Alcala had strangled her with her own nylon stockings. It's always strangling.
Okay.
Now, he would strangle them until they're out cold, right?
Mhm.
He would resuscitate them and do it again.
So, okay, I can't even...
So he would strangle them until they're unconscious,
Mhm.
and then, like, have a little freak out episode, give them mouth-to-mouth, like, resuscitation.
No, he didn't.
They would get their breath back, and then he would do it again.
He would strangle them to where they're out.
And then
revive
them,
fucking do
and
it
then
again.
he would revive them, and they'd realize it, and they'd be like, no, stay away from me, and he'd do it again.
This is all so evil. Okay, go ahead.
In 1971, Alcala obtained a job at a New York, Hampshire arts camp. Camp New Beginnings in the village of George Mills on Lake Sunapee. My pants. Anyway.
Shut up.
As a counselor for children, using a slightly different alias, John Berger.
Why? John Berger?
He went from John Berger to John Berger.
Oh, wow, okay. I'm Brandon Almeida.
At this time, he was added to the FBI's top 10 most wanted in 1971. A few months later, two campers seen his photo on an FBI poster in the post office. That August, Alcala was arrested and extradited to California. By then, Tally Shapiro's parents had relocated their entire family to Mexico and refused to allow her to testify at the trial.
So she was the 8-year-old
Yes.
that survived.
Yep. And
Okay.
But because they would not allow her to stand trial against him, they couldn't convict him with that. So the only thing they could convict him with is child molestation, which at the time was a lesser charge, and was sentenced to 3 years.
Oh my gosh.
And then paroled 2 months early at 34 months.
I wonder, he must have gotten there's no way he must have gotten his ass beat in prison. There's no
Brian,
way.
there's so much more. Brian, there's so much more.
I'm so excited. Okay. All right.
Don't be excited.
Well, I mean, I'm just engaged. I didn't realize
Alcala was rearrested and convicted for assaulting a 13-year-old girl identified in court records only as Julie J.
Fucking monster. Go ahead.
So after Alcala's second release in 1977, his Los Angeles parole officer made the unusual choice of permitting a repeat offender who also is known as a flight risk, which,
He's gonna run.
Just allowed him to travel to New York City.
Allow him to travel to his old stomping grounds.
Yeah, today, New York Police Department investigators believe that a week after returning to Manhattan, Alcala killed Ellen Jane Hover, a 23-year-old daughter of nightclub owner Herman Hover and goddaughter of, tell me if you know these ones, Dean Martin.
Yes.
And who is an American singer, actor, and comedian, one of the most popular entertainers of the mid-20th century.
The Rat Pack, bro.
Nicknamed the King of Cool. He actually gained his real career breakthrough with Jerry Lewis. Making appearances, starting in nightclubs, billed together as Martin and Lewis, then radio, movies, and television.
He was the Nutty Professor before Eddie Murphy.
Yep.
Go ahead.
She was the goddaughter of Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr.
Wow.
An American singer, actor, comedian, dancer, and musician. So Hover was last seen at her New York apartment on July 15th, 1977. Her date book showed that she had an appointment to meet with one John Berger that same day. Later in 1977, the FBI received a tip about Alcala's arrest in New Hampshire related to the Shapiro case in California. Alcala admitted to knowing Hover under questioning, but investigators could not arrest him since they had not found her body.
So this guy just keeps skating left and right.
Her remains were discovered in 1978, buried under heavy rocks on a hillside overlooking the Hudson River.
Wow.
Near a location at the John D. Rockefeller estate.
Near there or on the property?
Near a location on the John D. Rockefeller estate.
That's
where
crazy.
an aspiring model would later report the Berger had taken pictures of her. And Brian, that's where I'm stopping part 1.
I don't want you to stop. I want to know more.
Oh, you'll know more.
I guess we should clarify then. Tell the people what we're doing with your episode.
So we're making this a 2-parter.
I'm so excited.
So everyone just listening, and even Brian just heard part 1. Part 2 will be on our next episode.
That's appropriate, I guess. We're doing another television episode on the next. Okay, sweet.
What do you think so far?
That's crazy. I didn't realize how much connective tissue was in between this story.
Brian, there's so much more.
That's crazy.
We haven't even got to the dating game yet.
Sure.
And even after the dating game.
Oh, don't tell me too much.
That's all I'll tell you.
Right on. Okay, that was really good. Thank you, Richard. That was awesome. And that was Real Horrors. All right, welcome to Horror Reels, where we conduct deep dive reviews of horror films and TV shows. Richard, I'm really excited to be talking about this. This is our first TV show. Today, we're discussing from 1963, The Twilight Zone, Season 5, Episode 6, Living Doll. But a little bit of background on the show itself. The Twilight Zone was an Emmy Award-winning anthology series which ran from October of 1959 to June of 1964 on CBS. Although the overarching theme of the series was science fiction, many episodes dove into fantasy, drama, and horror, which of course we're here covering today. The series was created by Rod Serling, who also served as head writer, executive producer, narrator, and host. Most episodes featured bookended appearances by Serling, both introducing and concluding the story, much like Tales from the Crypt and its beloved Crypt Keeper 30 years later. We open on that creepy-ass Twilight Zone theme narrated by Rod Serling. We can't do it because we don't want a copyright strike, but everybody knows the theme to the Twilight Zone. And I remember being a kid, I remember you saying this earlier, but when we were both kids, this theme scared the hell out of us. Like, it always, like, if I heard it
would be in the middle of the night and you hear that coming on TV, and I'm like...
your parents watching it in the next room on Nick at Night and shit, or forget about it.
Or it's just on the TV, like, you know. Just...
immediate survival mode.
Throw my hands up.
That's how good it is.
I'm about to start swinging.
So we open on that Twilight Zone theme narrated by Rod Serling, and the episode starts. The episode opens on a mother, Annabelle, played by Mary LaRoche, and her daughter, Christy, played by Tracy Stratford.
Tracy Stratford sounds familiar to me. I don't know why.
Okay, Tracy Stratford, the actress, she's like 7 years old at this time, I'm guessing, 8, somewhere. She's a little kid. She went on 2 years later to voice Lucy in A Charlie Brown Christmas in 1965. Super cool, but they park at home and they're getting out of the car, and it looks like they're just getting back from a shopping trip, and Mom is retrieving an armload of gift wrap packages from the back seat, and Christy gets out of the passenger seat with a single large package. Mom kind of nervously stops Christy in the driveway, and she tells her to take her gift straight upstairs once they get inside. And Christy asks if Daddy can see it, to which Annabelle says not right away. And so Christy agrees and they head inside. And we cut to the interior of the Strader household, the living room. And Eric Strader, played by Telly Savalas, sits at a desk going over paperwork as Annabelle and Christy enter. Now, Telly Savalas was the lead in that series Kojak. He's sitting at a desk and he's going over paperwork. He's the dad as Annabelle and Christy enter. Eric greets them and immediately asks Annabelle and Christy what they bought. And Annabelle says nothing much, and she tries to send Christy and her gift upstairs, but Eric asks Christy what she has, and Annabelle says it's just a doll, and Eric says she doesn't need another doll, and he starts to say, I thought we agreed, before Annabelle yields, and she tells Christy to show Daddy her doll. So Christy brings the package into the living room, and she opens it for Eric. She's a good kid.
She's like, yeah, Daddy, look at my doll. Isn't it cute? Isn't it pretty?
Yeah, and she's all happy about it. And she pulls a doll out of the package, and the doll is in a dress and has dark pigtails. And it kind of reminds me of Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, like with the farm girl dress and the hair. Anyway, and Christy tells Eric, she's alive, Daddy, and her name is Talkie Tina. Now, Talkie Tina is based off of a real-life Mattel doll called Chatty Cathy, and she was manufactured by Mattel from 1959 to 1965. Something interesting of note, the gal that did the voice for Talkie Tina, her name is June Foray, and I didn't realize that she's a total heavy hitter in the voice acting industry. She's like a legend. She not only portrays the voice of Talkie Tina in this, she also provided the original voice work for Chatty Cathy back in the day. The Mattel doll that Talkie Tina is based off of. She was also in a bunch of the original Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry and Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Damn.
She went on to do Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Space Jam.
Oh my God.
So June Foray, hats off. Eric is pissed that the doll was probably expensive, and Annabelle defensively tells him she charged it to their account. But Christy is psyched about her new doll and winds up Talkie Tina. Now Talkie Tina has a wind-up
Key.
Has a winding key in the back. Thank you, like Woody. Or no, excuse me. Chatty Cathy had the string. Like Woody.
Yep.
He's pissed, and the kid is all psyched, and Talkie Tina comes alive. Every time she talks, her head moves back and forth from left to right, while her arms alternatingly rise up and down, and you can hear her gears like unwinding. And she says, "My name is Talkie Tina, and I love you very much." But Eric is pissed, and he's insistent upon knowing how much the doll cost, and Annabelle tells him she doesn't think it's the cost of the doll that he's upset about, and he backfires and says, "Now we're going to get some more of that Freudian gibberish you've been getting from the doctor, huh?" Annabelle comments that it isn't Dr. Lubin's fault that Christy feels rejected. Christy has wound Talkie Tina up once more, and she says, "My name is Talkie Tina, and I love you very much." And Eric yells at her to shut that thing off, and Christy's upset, and she drops the doll on the living room sofa, and she runs upstairs, and she has tears in her eyes. Annabelle asks Eric, "How could you?" And she chases up the stairs after Christy. All the while, Talkie Tina's gears are still winding down. And we zoom in on Talkie Tina on the couch, and her gears are winding down, and she's moving. Eric walks up to the doll, and just before he picks it up, the doll stops moving, and its eyes are closed. And then its eyes open up, and they're directly looking at Eric, and it's silent. And Eric picks up the doll, and he turns it over, and he's winding its back before turning it back over. Talkie Tina's gears are winding, and her head is swiveling, and her arms are rising and falling. And Talkie Tina says, "My name is Talkie Tina, and I don't think I like you."
Oh God.
It's so...
Time to get rid of the doll.
It's super minimal, and this is a classic example of doing a lot with a little. And this moment, it's hair-raisingly...
It's kind of like the moment in Black Christmas where he goes, "I'm going to kill you."
Yeah, it's very simple, and yet you're like, shit. So Eric Strader stares down at this doll in shock, and we pan over to Rod Serling, our host, who gives us a nice intro to the segment before we cut to the commercial break. So we fade back into Eric Strader, once again slowly winding the gear on Talkie Tina's back as we get the title card Living Doll with some brief credits. And the credits fade as Eric turns the doll over in his hand, and gears whirring, Tina says, "My name is Talkie Tina, and I think I could even hate you." Eric throws the doll against a living room wall.
Pappin style.
And
Sorry. I'm going to try to get it in every episode.
Yes, every episode somebody gets it Pappin style. Hell yes. So she says, "I think I could even hate you." And Eric gives it to this bitch Pappin style, and he throws her against the wall, and she lands at the foot of the staircase. And we zoom in on the doll's face, and her eyes open, and she says, "My name is Talkie Tina, and you'll be sorry."
Oh, shit.
Annabelle comes down the steps, and she sees that Eric threw the doll, and she asks him why and that he didn't have to throw it. And Eric says he doesn't like what the doll says, and he walks up to her, and he takes the doll from Annabelle, and he winds it. And he turns it over, and the doll answers with the standard, "My name is Talkie Tina, and I love you very much." And Annabelle expresses that she doesn't know how much more of his anger she can take, that he resents her and Christy, and that she can't allow her child to be treated this way. And through their conversation, we're realizing that Eric is actually Christy's stepfather. And that he's incapable of having children on his own. Now, I'm going to say this is that I feel like step-parents, in a lot of ways, really get a bad rap. It's not an easy thing to walk into. I respect a step-parent who's able to come in and love a child that didn't come from them. That's
like Ian.
Absolutely. Or like even my father's wife and my mother's husband, both of them are wonderful people. So that's my experience. You know, this episode kind of takes the role of the step-parent and turns it for the negative. We're almost getting the idea that Eric, because Christy is not his, that he doesn't love her. And he's incapable of having kids. And he accuses Annabelle of resenting him for it. And Eric is a total dick and isn't sympathetic or understanding in any capacity. He's clearly resentful of himself and his current marriage. Annabelle asks him to please give her and Christy a chance. And she says, "I know you got more than you bargained for when you married me. 2 for the price of 1, wasn't it?"
Oh.
That's what Eric said to this woman. Yeah, 2 for the price of 1. You're bringing this burden along with you. She says that she and Christy will do anything to make him happy. And Christy comes down the stairs and she calls Eric Daddy, and she says she's sorry if she made him mad, and he tells her it's all right, that it's all Daddy's fault, and he kind of strokes her face, and things are fine for the moment. Annabelle gives Talkie Tina back to Christy, who smiles and hugs her doll and walks away as Talkie Tina says, "My name is Talkie Tina, and I love you very much." And we fade to the dining room where Eric, Annabelle, and Christy are eating dinner. And Christy pretends to feed Talkie Tina from her own plate, and she smudges what looks like mashed potatoes on Tina's mouth. Eric tells Christy to eat her own supper, and he looks at the doll whose eyes are closed, and Tina suddenly opens one eye and she winks at Eric. And Eric comments that he didn't know the doll could wink, and Christy says, "Tina can't wink," and Eric hesitantly replies, "Oh, never mind." So he asks Annabelle where they got the doll, and she tells him where, and that Talkie Tina will be a good playmate for Christy. Eric gets super pissed and weird and defensive, and he accuses Annabelle of buying the doll as a reminder to Eric that Christy is lacking a
He was just
sibling.
asking where'd the doll come from. That's
Yeah, he's like, "Where'd the doll come from?" She's like, and the mom's like kind of timid. She's like, "I bought it at this whatever store, some made-up store. I bought it at this store. She'll make a good playmate for Chris." And he's like, "Oh, yeah, because I can't have kids." Like, basically, it's just so, yeah, he's just such a dick. He gets pissed and he accuses Annabelle of buying the doll as a reminder that Christy is lacking a sibling. And Annabelle doesn't get mad. The mom doesn't get mad. She's hurt by his accusation. And we hear the front door ring, and the mom gets up. Annabelle gets up to go answer it. Annabelle comes back from answering the front door, and she informs Christy that her friend Linda is here and tells her to leave her doll inside if she's going out to play. So Christy exits, and Annabelle gathers up some dishes, then heads to the kitchen. And Eric is alone with the doll now, and it starts moving on its own, gears whirring. And we zoom in on the doll, and she says, "My name is Talkie Tina, and I'm beginning to hate you." Eric slowly wipes his mouth, and he gets up, and he moves over to a chair next to the doll, and he wipes off the doll's mouth, and he says, "My name is Eric Strader, and I'm going to get rid of you." And Talkie Tina turns to look at him, and she says, "You wouldn't dare." And he picks her up and he puts her on the dining room table in front of him. And Tina says, if he gets rid of her, that everyone's going to hate him, herself included. Eric lights a cigarette with a match, and he touches the lit match to Tina's nose, and she kind of yelps. And Eric says, "So you have feelings?" And Talkie Tina says, "Doesn't everything?" And Eric says, "So I can hurt you?" And Talkie Tina says, "Not really, but I could hurt you."
Yikes. This doll's gone savage.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, "I wish a bitch would."
Eric begins laughing as Annabelle enters the room once more, and she asks who he's talking to. He hands the doll to her, and he says, "The game's over." And Annabelle is genuinely confused, and she says she doesn't know what he's talking about. And Eric says, "I admit I don't know too much about modern times, like putting walkie-talkies in dolls." Eric thinks that Annabelle is playing a joke on him, and he laughs it off. And Christy comes in and asks for Tina, and Annabelle hands the doll over to Christy, and Christy leaves with the doll. Annabelle tells Eric once more that she isn't playing a joke on him. She looks concerned, and Eric doesn't believe her, and he accuses her and Christy of trying to get even with him. And he asks why the doll never talks to him when she's in the room. And Annabelle is shocked that Eric really means what he's saying, and she has no answer for him. Eric leaves convinced that Annabelle has been pranking him with this doll. We cut to the Straders' dimly lit garage, and there's 2 bulbs, one overhead and one at a workbench, and it's night. And Eric enters, and he's calling for Christy, looking for her. And on a workbench in the dark of the garage, Talkie Tina is sitting there. Her head is rotating, and her arms are rising and falling, and her gears are whirring. And as Eric eyes the doll, it stops moving. And Eric closes the garage door, and he approaches the doll, and he picks it up by the leg, and he takes it to an empty metal trash can, and he removes the lid.
Please don't.
She says, "You are going to be sorry." And Eric, his forehead is beady with sweat. He pauses momentarily before throwing the doll in the trash can. So he just he puts the doll in the trash, sets the lid on top, and he's like, "Okay, that's good."
I would put something on top of the lid.
Or something. He leaves the garage and he turns the lights out. And we fade to the living room where Eric is cracking and munching on walnuts. Is that what people do? They get walnuts and crack them with the
yeah,
metal thing
that
there. And
or like the circus peanuts or
No, not circus peanuts. That's like candy. But there's one you need a cracker.
Walnuts.
Okay, it must be walnuts. Yeah, so he's munching on walnuts on the couch, and Christy enters and she asks where Tina is. And Eric lies and says he wouldn't know. Eric tells Christy to ask her mother. Annabelle enters and says that Christy already asked her and that they can't find the doll. Annabelle asks if Eric knows where the doll is, and he kind of talks around it. And Annabelle clearly knows it's bullshit, and she takes Christy upstairs to search for Tina. So Eric continues munching, and he looks pleased with himself. And the phone rings, and Eric gets up and answers. And he says, hello? And there's no answer. And he repeats, and Talkie Tina says, my name is Talkie Tina, and I'm going to kill you.
Billy!
Yeah, she goes all Black Christmas on him. Like, where's the second phone line? Like, we get this nice musical cue, and we fade to black for a commercial break. And we fade back in, and Eric is holding the phone to his ear, and he's asking, who is this? There's no answer. And Eric hangs up, and he's starting to look a little shook. He thinks for a moment, and then he exits the living room, and we cut to the garage where Eric enters and turns on the 2 bulbs. And they're dimly lit. Whoever did the lighting for this episode, by the way, hats off. The shadows in the garage, they're all so very prominent and creepy, and the whole scene is very claustrophobic. It's like anything could be hiding in the shadows of this garage. So he walks over to the trash can, and he kind of stares at it, and then he grabs the lid, and we get a shot, this wonderful overhead shot, looking down into the trash can and into the interior, and it's heavily shadowed as Eric is slowly pulling the lid back, revealing that it's empty. And Eric looks stunned, and we get this great musical cue, and he once again exits the garage, turning the lights out, and he's pissed, searching the house and calling for Annabelle, and he finds her coming down the stairs, and he asks where the doll is, and he's telling Annabelle, you knew I put it in the trash. What did you do with it? And Annabelle's like, what do you mean you threw it away? And, yeah, she's like, you asshole. Like, especially he was the one that was complaining about how, from her perspective, he's the one that was complaining about how much it costs. Suddenly he's throwing it away. So to her, he's like, he's losing his mind. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Eric tells her that she's taken the joke too far, and he yells at her for her and Christy to stop it. And she swears that she hasn't seen the doll. And Eric is kind of starting to believe her, and he's asking if she really didn't take it. And Annabelle says she didn't, but she's upset that he would throw it away. And Eric asks about the phone call, and of course Annabelle has no idea what he's talking about. And he tells her that Talkie Tina threatened to kill him. And Annabelle is stunned, and she doesn't know what to say. And Eric says if it wasn't her, it must be Christy. And he heads upstairs to her room. And we cut to Christy's room, and Eric opens her door, and her room is pitch black, like Barb's room in Black Christmas. It's pitch black except for the light from the hall. There's a lot of Black Christmas comparisons, actually, watching this now. We see that Christy is asleep in bed, and she's holding Talkie Tina, and Tina's eyes are closed. And Eric enters the dark of the room and slowly approaches Christy's bed. And Tina's eyes open, and she tells Eric, I told you you'd be sorry. And then she starts saying, Christy, wake up, Christy. And Christy wakes up to find Eric standing over her bed. And he tells her to go back to sleep as he begins to pry the doll out of her arms. And she resists, and she says that she wants Tina. And Eric snatches the doll away, and he snarls at her to go back to sleep. And he goes to leave with the doll as Annabelle enters the room and asks him what's going on. And Eric says that Christy had the doll, and she's the one that's been tricking him. And Christy's crying and pleading, and she says, Daddy, please. And Eric yells, I'm not your daddy. And
Damn.
Yeah, dude. Cold. Just brutal. This girl's like 7, 8 years old, and you take her toy, and you're like, I'm not your dad. He's just such a dick. He leaves with the doll, and Christy is weeping, and Annabelle consoles her. And Eric takes the doll down the stairs, and he heads down to the garage, and we get this great piece of music that's prevalent throughout the rest of the episode. The score for this episode was composed and conducted by Bernard Herrmann, who had previously composed the music for Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho in 1960.
Are you talking about, like, for example, isn't the original Psycho where he stabs her in the shower?
Yes,
Yeah, that.
exactly. Or even just the opening music, it's just so shocking and jarring, and it's moving. It's just such a great score. The music to this episode is so enchanting, and I've always loved it so much. And to find out that it's the same man that composed and conducted for Psycho, it's just awesome. The music is great because it makes you feel everything you're supposed to feel. Eric's moments of shock and disbelief and realization, him getting the call from the doll, or him in the garage realizing that the trash can is now empty, the music makes us feel those things with him. And here, when he's taken Talkie Tina from Christy and he's heading down the stairs, and this music kicks in that's prevalent through the rest of the episode, we know Eric has taken a turn as a character, and he's beginning to snap, and that he's scheming a plan, and it's business mode now, and he may or may not be in over his head with this doll. All these things are communicated through the music in this moment. Eric enters the garage holding Talkie Tina, and he walks through the darkness without turning on a light until he turns on a single bulb above his workbench. So Eric places Talkie Tina's head in a bench clamp.
Oh, God.
And he tightens the vise until she's firmly held in place. He hovers his face over hers, and he whispers, "Die." And her eyes open and her gears whir, and she says, "You'll die." Eric begins tightening the clamp with all his might, and the vise squeezes the sides of Talkie Tina's head, but doesn't give. And Eric says, "I thought you said you had feelings." And Tina, she sounds super sly. She says, "I can stand it if you can." And she giggles. Eric retrieves a small blowtorch and then lights it, and he takes it to Tina's face. And
Oh my God.
and the flame immediately goes out. And Eric relights it.
She's
Yeah. So he relights it and he tries again, and it immediately goes out when he touches it to her face. And he tries repeatedly to no avail. And this doll is clamped down on his workbench, and she's looking up at him and she's giggling. And Eric tosses the torch aside all pissed, and he loosens the vise, and he takes Tina to a separate workbench, and he turns on a light, and he's got this circular saw. And he turns it on, and he takes it to Talkie Tina's neck, like to decapitate her, and the blade begins sparking. And Eric continues trying to cut the doll, and the sparks are flying, and the doll isn't giving. Annabelle walks into the garage behind him, and she approaches and sees what he's doing, and she tries to physically stop him, and Eric shoves her off and continues trying to destroy the doll. Annabelle looks pissed, and she exits. And he's giving it his best effort, and he pulls the doll away from the saw, and he's shocked to see that there isn't a single scratch on Talkie Tina. So this otherworldly bitch. This
otherworldly bitch.
This otherworldly little bitch is like apparently like invincible. He is holding her, and he looks around his garage, and he spots a burlap bag, and he grabs it and shoves her inside, and then he ties the bag shut with some rope. Eric takes the burlap and he throws it in the metal garbage can, and he puts the lid on top, and then he grabs some cinder blocks, Menzel, and he grabs some cinder blocks finally and stacks them on top of the lid, and he exits the garage. Well, I mean, come on. You should have done that the first freaking time.
Well, he didn't realize it. It's a doll.
He should have gone, I would have put this little asshole in a box and chained that shit shut and thrown it in the fucking... Dude, I would be gone,
and then
bro.
You go home, it's
throw it
on
in the
sea.
sea.
There looking at you.
Oh my gosh. It's not even wet. Oh, and then I just start like drowning, like coughing up seawater.
Doll situation?
Yeah, or something. I don't know. He's got the doll in the burlap bag. He throws her in the trash. He fucking puts the lid and the cinder blocks on top like he should have done the first frickin' time, and he exits the garage. And we fade to Eric in Annabelle's bedroom, and Eric enters to find his wife packing up all of her shit, and she says that she can't live with Eric anymore and that he clearly hates her and Christy, and she tells him he needs a good psychiatrist. And Eric sits on the bed in disbelief, and he's saying to himself, I couldn't have imagined it. There's no way. I couldn't. Annabelle is packing all of her belongings, and she asks what he did with the doll, and Eric doesn't answer. But then he asks, if he gives the doll back, will it fix things? And Annabelle says she doesn't know. Eric exits the bedroom, and we cut back to the garage, and Eric enters looking defeated, and he approaches the trash can, and he takes the cinder blocks and the lid off, and he pulls the burlap bag out of the trash, and he unties the rope, and he pulls the doll out. And she turns on, and she says, my name is Talkie Tina, and I don't forgive you. And Eric is near tears, and he's clutching the doll, and he's pleading with it through gritted teeth to please shut up. And he leaves the garage, and he takes Talkie Tina back up the stairs through the dark and into Christy's room, where Annabelle is consoling her. And Eric gives Christy the doll and leaves without saying a word. All of this could have been avoided if he had just been a nicer person. I'm just going to say that right now. If he had just had more of a kind heart, none of this would have happened. As we come to the finale, we fade to Eric in Annabelle's room, and it's dark, and Eric is asleep, and we suddenly hear Tina's gears whirring, and Eric wakes up, and he slowly rises in bed as the whirring is getting louder, and we can hear the sound of floorboards creaking out in the hallway.
What?
And it's genuinely scary. So he's waking up in the dark, and you can hear this doll's gears whirring and you hear floorboards like... He sits up in bed, and Annabelle rises up in her bed. By the way, they're in two separate beds.
Oh, yeah.
Because this is the early 60s, and you can't have couples in the same bed, not like real life or anything, you know.
I don't know why they did that.
It might have been an extension of the whole Hays Code thing before they had a rating system for movies. The Hays Code was like...
This happened in real life. This didn't just happen in the movies.
Oh, you're saying why did people do that back then?
Yeah.
I'm not sure they really did.
No, they did.
I mean, I'm sure throughout history there have been couples that do and don't.
Enough
sure.
having babies or something, so we're going to separate the beds.
I wouldn't want that. I'm trying to get them snuggles, like every night.
Yeah, but snuggles need more.
Duh. Wake up first thing.
Anyway, like, Brian, lucky. Finish this story.
Annabelle rises in bed, and she asks
How does she rise?
Shut up. Like Nosferatu.
Speaking of which, Brian, I'm going to see that movie.
I did see it.
Fuck you. I wanted to see it with you.
I did. Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, I'd go see it again, sure.
Did you see the...
It would give me a better...
Just for pause real quick, did you see that the guy was so excited to get the prosthetic of Nosferatu?
No, I haven't seen that. You know about that part, though?
I've heard about it.
I thought it was just Bill Skarsgård's dick.
And you're over here like, ah!
Yeah. Well, and at the time, it just kind of happened so abruptly. And there's other stuff going on in this moment. And so I kind of didn't notice the cock until like a minute later. And then I was like, wait, his dick was out. You know what I mean? Anyway, he gets up and he tells Annabelle to stay in bed. Stay in your bed. Your bed that you sleep in. We don't ever...
Coffin.
We wonder why I'm incapable of producing children. He gets up and he tells her to stay in the bed, and he goes out into the hall. And out in the hall, he peers through the dark as the whisper of Tina's whirring gears creeps through the house. And he looks around for a moment before making his way to Christy's room, and he opens the door to find her asleep, alone, in bed. Eric glances around the room for a moment as the gear sound dies down, and he exits Christy's room and quietly closes the door behind him. And then out in the hall, the gear starts whirring again. So it wasn't in Christy's room, it's out here somewhere. And Eric comes to the top of the stairs, and he's looking around the darkness, trying to find the source of the sound, and he begins making his way down the stairs. We get a quick shot of Tina lying on the staircase as Eric accidentally steps on her and he slips, causing him to tumble down the staircase and smash into the floor below, and he can't move. And Tina rolls down the stairs after him and lands next to his face. She's the very last thing Eric sees before he dies.
I thought he just couldn't move. Wait, what?
I always assumed that the implication was he broke his neck.
Oh, okay.
That's what I figured. But he falls, he's like lying there, and she falls and she lands next to him and he sees her, and then he just dies. And Annabelle comes to the top of the staircase, and she sees Eric lying below, and she screams his name, and she comes running down the stairs to his side. She's shaking Eric, and she says his name, and he doesn't respond. Annabelle turns to talkie Tina lying on the floor next to him, and she picks up the doll, and Tina turns on in Annabelle's hand, and her eyes open, and she says, "My name is Talkie Tina, and you'd better be nice to me." And Annabelle stares at the doll in wide-eyed shock before dropping her back to the floor. She's clutching the body of her husband dead at her side, and we slowly zoom away from the three of them there at the bottom of the staircase. And we conclude with a wonderful Rod Serling epilogue that only he could deliver. I'm not going to butcher it. And we fade to black. And that's Living Doll from 1963. Super classic episode. I've always been amazed at the simplicity of the story, and it's shot in black and white, and how something from that era could really scare me like that. I just love it so much. The entire Twilight Zone series is actually streaming on Paramount+. So many classic episodes. There's sci-fi, there's horror, there's fantasy. There's something for everyone. Really just wonderful storytelling. I can't say it enough. Living Doll, Twilight Zone, 1963, Season 5, Episode 6. Go check it out on Paramount+. And that was Horror Reels. So for our next episode, it's going to be Valentine's Day. Richard, you've got...
the next episode, I'll be covering Rodney Alcala Part 2, The Day Game Killer.
Ooh, nice.
And I'll tell you what, Part 1 was just the beginning.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I can't wait to hear the rest of the story.
Brian, what about you? What are you going to be covering next time?
For our next episode, I'm going to be covering another classic episode of another classic horror TV show. It's a love-themed horror story. I can't wait for you guys to hear it. Richard, where can the people find the Bone Barrel Podcast on social media?
So they can find us at bonebarrelpod on X. Our new Instagram is at bonebarrelpod, and we have bonebarrelpod@gmail.com. That's been another installment of the Bone Barrel Podcast. Thank you again for listening, our Misfits and all things horror. I'm Richard Jones.
I'm Brian Almeida.
And this has been
The Bone Barrel Podcast.